Hey, what's up guys? So this is a project I'm working on right now. It's I would consider it a major project. The video should be done in about 2 weeks. It will have plans. It's going to be a long video. And anyway, it's going to be veneered. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about veneer and even why I decided to build this cabinet with a veneered surface. So number one, when you're working with veneer, you don't really need to worry about expansion and contraction the way you do when you're working with solid wood. If I was trying to build this with solid wood, I'd have to have the grain orientation in the same direction around the entire cabinet, and I'd have to allow for expansion and contraction. So then that really predicts how I'm going to build this. And I have built cabinets like this where I've dovetailed, and that way the cabinet can expand and contract together. And you also have to think about, in this case, the dividers of the cabinet, because they need to be able to expand and contract together. So in a situation like this, you might connect the dividers using a sliding dovetail. So it's just a lot more labor intensive because you'd have to glue up the boards and you'd have to do all that joinery. With veneer, I can basically make a plywood box and then wrap it in veneer. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's kind of what I'm doing here. Also, I'm a big fan of mid-century modern furniture, and this is going to be a mid-century modern inspired design. And a lot of mid-century modern furniture is veneered. I know a lot of people don't like veneer, but I like it. I think it gives, there's just a lot of possibilities when you start working with veneer. So that's really why I chose to build this cabinet and use a veneer surface. You might ask, well, why wouldn't you just build it out of a decorative plywood, like a walnut plywood? And the reason for that is I don't want to have to deal with a big miter joint, because if I was building this with walnut plywood, I'd have to have a perfect miter joint on all corners, and that's not that easy. And if you make a mistake there, it's really hard to fix that. So in this case, I've got a simple butt joint. I'll apply the veneer to the side of the cabinet and then the veneer to the top, and I shouldn't have any problems. So I posted the question on Instagram that I was going to talk about veneer in this video, and so here are some of your questions. What's the best adhesive to use? And I can really only talk about what I've used. I've never used hide glue. I've never used a vacuum press. I've only used contact cement and pressure sensitive veneer. With the contact cement, I've been working with veneer for more than 20 years and I've never had a problem. I know there's some hardcore woodworkers that don't like the idea of using contact cement with veneer, but like I said, I've never had a problem. I've never had a delamination, and I think it's very easy to use. When you're working with contact cement, you can adjust the veneer by putting sticks underneath the veneer, separating the veneer glued surface from the substrate glued surface. And as long as they don't touch, you'll be able to adjust them. So it's very easy to work with. One of the cons of working with veneer is if you're using contact cement, the contact cement has a very strong smell. So you want to be able to open up all your windows and turn on a fan and get that smell out of the shop. Pressure sensitive veneer, which is basically peel and stick veneer. It's really convenient because you don't need to use any glue, but it's not as easy to adjust as when you're working with contact cement. At least I haven't had any experience with that yet. I've only worked with it a little bit, and my feeling is you can make a major mistake because once that hits the surface, it's going to be really hard to remove it. I used it when I made the top to the last TV cabinet that I made, the TV lift cabinet that had a walnut veneer, and that was the pressure sensitive, and I really took a lot of time making sure that everything was adjusted so I didn't end up putting the veneer down a little short, because if you do that, I just don't know how to fix that. So for the most part, I use contact cement because I'm used to it. Where do you get most of your veneer? I've gotten veneer from Rockler. I've bought veneer from my local lumber yard. This is going back years ago. They're no longer in business. And Most recently, the veneer that I'm getting for this project is from a place, I think it's called the Woodworking Source. And I'm getting 2 sheets, and it's about $160 a sheet, and that's for walnut veneer, and it's going to have a paper back. I've only used paper backs. They do have wood backing. There's several different types of veneers, but generally I always use the species, and I like the paper back. It just seems to be easy to use. But yeah, just Google veneer and a whole bunch of suppliers will come up. This is a good one. How do you prepare warped veneer? So when your veneer gets shipped to you, it's going to come in a box like this. This is only 2 feet wide, but if you got a 4-foot sheet, it's going to be 4 feet wide. And it's going to be hard to get rid of that curl. So what I like to do is a day or even a few days before I use the veneer, I'll put a 4x8 sheet of plywood out, unroll the veneer, and then put another sheet of plywood on top. And then just give the veneer some time to kind of remove that warp. And then I make a cut list. So in this case, I'm going to have a top and 2 sides. I'm not going to veneer the bottom of the cabinet. So I'll have that cut list, and the cut list will be about 1 inch larger than whatever the surface is in both directions. So let's say that this is 20 by 20 inches. The veneer would be 21 by 21. That way I have a 1/2 inch overhang. So anyway, the first thing I would do when I came into work in the morning is I would take the cut list of my veneer cut list, a straight edge, and a razor knife, and I would cut all my veneer to size and then just put it off. So I then can work on my table saw and my assembly table or my outfeed table. What do I like to use for cutting veneer? I always just use a razor knife and a straight edge, and then for cutting the overhang, I always use a flush cut bit in the router. And I'm not doing anything real fancy with veneer. It's always generally just these very square type of cabinets. But for me, that seems to be the only tools I need. The last question is, what do you use to put the pressure on the contact cement or the veneer? And for years I used this. It's a J roller. Everybody knows and probably used one of these. But recently I switched over to just a block of wood. I'll cut a 45-degree angle on just the very edge of the block of wood. You could do that with a saw, or you could even do it with a piece of sandpaper. You just don't want it to be sharp. And then I use that block of wood and put pressure on it. And that's some advice I got from somebody who's been in the business for a long time. They say you get more even pressure with a straight edge, a softened straight edge on a block of wood than you will with the J roller. So anyway, that's about it. This video will be up, I guess, in about 2 weeks. It's going to have the SAS invisible hinge, so that's pretty cool. I'll be working with SAS on this project, and that's probably the next step. So I hope I'll see you then, and have a great day. To keep up with current projects, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. For vlog style Q&As and shop news, check out my second channel. I'll have links in the description.